Okay. I was muted. Thank you so much, Alena. Thank you very much to our colleagues for the invitation, and to Dr. Shamara. We're really, really pleased to be here, Sarah and I, with you. And let me start by introducing our agenda for today's session. We will briefly talk to you about the P2P, and mostly introduce you to our ethics group led by Sarah. And then we'll focus our presentation on a publication that we are about to launch, through which we've done a literature review, an intense literature review, and have some findings to present, but also, more importantly, we have some tips on how you can include some ethical principles in your, and no harm principles in your career. And we're going to present you with 10 tips on how to include and how to think about ethics in evaluation. Can you please move to the next slide? So my first slide has to do with P2P, and I'm going to be very synthetic. There is much I can say about it. Essentially, we started in 2017 together with EES primarily, but also with the UN and the World Bank, organizing sessions during conferences, organizing sessions for young and emerging evaluators on how they could develop their career, and peer-to-peer sessions. Last year, we decided to expand and to start transitioning to transform these sessions into a virtual experience, even before COVID-19. And since then, we evolved, we expanded thoroughly to now we are in 5 continents. We cover multiple languages, including a chapter led by Nazir and Yasmin and EvalYouth Asia here in Asia Pacific. But we also have chapters in Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic. We launched 2 sessions in Russian, and we organize these sessions monthly, where more senior evaluators are providing tips, career tips for those who are willing to enter in this career. And then as a surprise to this work, or as a complement, as something that came as a complementary to our work, we have been developing a lot of knowledge publications and investing in the knowledge that we get from the sessions, from all the tips. And this is where you will find P2P ethics. Sarah will talk to you more about how have we encountered the challenge of ethics in the context of young and emerging evaluators' career advice. And I'm very pleased to have Alena also joining our group, and soon we will be able to show you something more substantive. So today what we are sharing are preliminary results.
Thanks a lot, Mariana. Hi, everyone. Sarah here, talking from Germany. I'm very happy to be here, and that you're all here with us to listen to this preliminary presentation on the work that we've been doing over the past month. It's been quite exciting. So as Mariana was explaining, through the P2P career advisory sessions, we have realized that young and emerging evaluators had a significant amount of issues and dilemmas on ethics. And they came to us with so many questions, and we started to realize that we didn't actually have the enough background to provide the solid answers that they needed and deserved. So we were faced with questions such as, what do I do if I find corruption in the initiative that I'm evaluating? What do I do if I have a client that is pushing me towards a desired result? What do I do to ensure data confidentiality? So a wide diversity of dilemmas and challenges. And so we started to think about how to approach this in a systematic way. And this is how the ethics, the P2P ethics working group came into being. And the first building block of our strategy was to spend a lot of time looking at what is already out there, because there is a lot of resources. A lot has been written, a lot have been discussed about on ethics, And so we spent the first 6 months of our work doing a literature review. We've reviewed dozens of sources, from evaluation journals to peer-to-peer articles, blogs, podcasts, really a wide diversity, also even ethical books, philosophical books. And we started to map a diversity of problems, recurrent problems that evaluators were faced with. But we also tried to really keep in mind our first mission, which was not only to come here to talk about the problems, but to bring actionable tips and actionable guidance on what to do. Even for you, from tomorrow onward, we hope that some of the tips that we're presenting to you could already be implemented in your daily work. So here you have an overview of the most recurrent problems that are faced by evaluators, and not only young and emerging evaluators, even senior evaluators. We have tried to cluster. We really spent a lot of our time on clustering. So here you have 10 big buckets that present you the main challenges. And those buckets follow the evaluation cycle. So you first have the global issues, which are kind of cross-cutting issues throughout the different stages of an evaluation. Then you have the first stage of an evaluation, which is commissioning, planning, and designing the evaluation. Then the big part on actual data collection. And the last stage with more the analysis, the reporting, and the dissemination of the knowledge produced through the evaluation. Just to give you a sense a little bit of the type of issues, taking the first one, theoretical foundations. It might sound trivial, but there is so many resources out there, so many ethical guidelines and ethic guidebooks that are available and that are really well drafted. But to be honest, we could discuss this during the discussion at the end of the session, but I would be very, very curious to see within our audience today how many of you are aware of those ethical guidelines. And among those of you who are aware, how many of you actually opened one and read through those guidelines, which can be quite prescriptive and quite heavy as well. It's a lot of definitions, it's a lot of theories. So there is a lot, but we simply we don't take the time in our fast-paced work to actually integrate those in our work. Another one is the lack of the importance of having soft and relational skills. Especially for young and emerging evaluators, it's not always easy to exercise your place, to know where is your legitimacy. You're evolving in very challenging environments with very little security, and somehow there's still a lot of expectations on the end, on the receiving end. Evaluation is a difficult activity, both philosophically, intellectually, and the technical expertise that you have, although it's essential and it's really the basis, but it does not do everything for you. Your knowledge of R or data is important, but really help you when you're on the ground and people are just closing their doors to you because they don't want to take time to speak to you and talk truth about their work. No, you need the ability to speak to people, to build trust, to negotiate your independence. And I could go on, and I will stop here because the point of today's discussion is really to give you actionable tips. But there are a bunch of other challenges related to contractual issues, methodological issues, but also in terms of data collection, as you're probably aware. So moving now to the most exciting parts on actionable guidance. I'm starting here with the global issues, coming back again on this topic of the importance of securing a theoretical foundations. Agreeing on a definition is quite difficult on ethics. I mean, there's a lot of definitions out there, and we can always adopt different perspectives on it. Even the UN system doesn't really agree on one specific definition. But our goal here is really to try and keep it simple and pragmatic as much as possible, because we truly believe that ethics should be seen as a tool that helps you in your daily work, helps you in your ethical decision-making, in making value judgments. And effectiveness should be ethical as much as ethics should be effective. So to keep it simple, we would like today to just briefly say one definition would be being ethical is about having values, about being good, right, and trying to embody this character in your daily work, trying to have professional ethics. To take one of the most famous guidelines that are out there, we wanted to focus on the UNEC ethical guidelines, which have been lastly updated in 2020, and more specifically on the 4 ethical standards that those guidelines are shedding lights on. You have integrity, accountability, respect, and beneficence. So all very fancy words. We want to really quickly break it down a little bit more with you today. So integrity is about being honest, being truthful, and being professional in your work, trying to be independent and to not be corruptible. Accountability requires transparency, responsiveness, and simply being able to take responsibility for your action. Respect is about having a meaningful engagement and treating fairly all the stakeholders involved in your evaluation. And beneficence is a little bit what it gets closer to do no harm. It's about having ongoing considerations of the potential risk and benefits from your evaluation process on the people that are involved. I will stop here. We can go on during the discussion. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have. And now I'm giving the floor to Mariana to present you the bucket on soft and relational skills.
Thanks, Sarah. Can you just click one? Can you do one more click so that the other? Yeah, perfect. So Sarah talked to you about some of the problems or challenges being encountered at the level of soft skills, and she pointed out already to the importance of being able to manage your influence, to negotiate, to manage conflicts of interests. But I want to give you like 3 very important lines of thought regarding the pathway to build soft skills. One is the importance of credibility and integrity as one of the main principles cited by UNEG, ensuring that in your work, instead of a search for titles, you are really searching for the best, the highest, the product of best and highest quality, and that you do everything at your disposal to really deliver, to really help the last beneficiary, the communities, and those who are being object of evaluation. Still at the first point, it's very important to remember that that evaluation is an exercise of influence, and we need to understand the extent of our role, but also have leadership skills. And by leadership, I mean the ability to serve a cause and to serve the highest interest, being that our team or the client or the ultimate beneficiary. So being an evaluator without leadership skills, without building, attending courses and framing yourself as a person that is able to serve properly, it's very insubstantial. And then the second thing, in order to acquire that, it's very important that you have people that can guide you. In my case, I learn a lot from senior evaluators. Alena mentioned that I started in EES, the European Evaluation Society. And the senior members of the society were the ones that really incited me, and the ones that I still call if I have an ethical challenge, I still call them. And in my work, I still call the elderly ones to understand what should I do. So having that support and having inspirational figures that can teach you how to be correct and firm and rigorous and have integrity, that is very important. And then the aspect of decision making, I have a few tips here, and we will share the presentation with you. We don't want to be dense. We want to be very practical with you. Can you skip to the next slide? We'll come back to this later. Here are 10 tips on how to make ethical decisions. Evaluation is a process of making decisions, as you very well know, right? You have the scope in the beginning, and then you need to make decisions based on the scope that you've created together with the client. But every step of the evaluation puts you in a situation of scarce resources where there is no right or wrong, but you really need to be able to allocate your energy in the best way possible. And the other slide that is before that, if you don't mind, is just a small tip, something that I'm actually watching this series on Masterclass, and I'm loving it. It's about negotiation. It's about knowing how to mirror other people, how to create empathy with other people. And that's a very important soft skill as well. maybe we can move to slide number 13. Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. Sarah, over to you.
Yeah, so another tip that is also linked to what Mariana was just saying about the importance of having a support system around you that you can always reach out to. There's this bucket on the importance of ensuring mental and physical well-being. As you all know, evaluation is a demanding profession. It can be overwhelming. You have requests coming all over the place all the time. You're traveling a lot as well, and you're exposing yourself to potential risk. And we've seen very often that the stage of contract making, when you're creating your contract, is sometimes buried in the, you just want to get started with the task of the evaluation, the actual content, because it's exciting and you are excited. The issue is this is a very, very important stage actually to ensure your own well-being and your own security. Checking your contract, do it. You want to do it. Reach out to more senior evaluator to check with them if you're unsure about certain things. Check your insurance policy. So in general, what we're trying to say here is be careful about yourself. Not only care about others, but also about yourself. It's important. Build, again, a network of experienced evaluators around you to the best extent possible. Go check P2P. This is basically where you want to end at the end of the day. But also get a good lawyer. That's also important because we're not always juridic experts, but somehow we need that also in our work.
Thanks. Let's go to bucket 4 and please click twice. Bucket 4 for me is very close to my heart, and this is the topic, the guiding title of our webinar, and has to do with doing no harm. And Dr. Shamara really made a good speech about it in the beginning, where we are facing so many international constraints and the increase of inequality. And we are in an era where it's more than, one definition that I really like about ethics is that ethics is knowing your values and then having the ability to make a decision based on your values. So it's not only having the values, the beauty of ethics is knowing how do you apply your values facing different situations. And those situations have a context. And now we are at a moment where many of you are in touch with the movement of transformational evaluation, equity in evaluation. We moved from talking, can you click once again on the slide? We are moving from the discussion on equality to discussion on equity and justice, doing evaluation from the lenses of no oppression, and not only being the evaluator that has an accountability and learning function, but also being the evaluator that ultimately wants that evaluation to respect people and to maximize the good that we can take from that assessment or research we are conducting. So knowing the context and grounding yourself and the people that work with you and for you with all these concepts and how to do it, because it's very easy to say that equity and justice is important, is less easy to actually make sure that your indicators, that the scope of your project, that the way you report the findings is in line with the best practices when it comes to justice and no oppression. For that, we are preparing a consultation with senior evaluators, and we have a lot of tips when it comes to working in FCV countries that can help you. I'm going to move to the next slide and tell you that we've been, these first 4 buckets, the theoretical foundations, building on your soft skills, ensuring your well-being, your own well-being, and being grounded on these very important matters. These are 4 buckets that any evaluator can cultivate, but it are also 4 buckets that an organization, a consultancy firm, an agency needs to invest to make sure that their staff are practicing evaluation, a kind of evaluation that is embedded in these principles. And this is a perfect segue for Sarah to talk to you about ethics at the level of organization, bucket 5, and bucket 6, ethics at the level of teams and working with projects.
Absolutely. So it's one thing to know how to be grounded and to be ethical in your behavior. It's another one to have organizations around you that support that mentality and that ethical decision making, and that makes it also systemic in their own operational system. At the level of an organization, not only is it important to have the tools and the templates, but it's also important to have a mentality shift to make sure that the higher level senior managers are agreeing with this and with this shift of mentality, but that also the new recruit that you are hiring are aware that this is a big part of your identity as an organization. So it's at every level. And in the middle, there are the people who are already working in the company. Training and opening up the dialogue is essential. Again, having beautifully thought template is one thing. Having people actually being able to implement all the knowledge that are in those templates is another. And I wanted to focus today, because we're running out of time as usual, but I wanted to focus on the evaluation quality assurance system, which can have different names depending on the organization. So here it's the WFP system, but UNFPA, for instance, calls it evaluation quality assurance and assessment. It basically refers to a sort of a package. You could consider it a package of guidance that is provided for in-house evaluation teams, so the Office of Evaluation within WFP, but also at their level of regional and country bureau. And it's also used, and I know it from where I work, it's also used by external evaluation teams and by consultancy firms that are working with external experts on evaluations. And this package is basically providing a diversity of guidance. It can be, as I was saying, templates from the inception phase of an evaluation to the last stage. So it basically walks through different things that you need to think of at the level of an inception report, the type of annexes that you can put as well on how you will include ethics in your evaluation throughout the different stages. And it brings you until the very end, the dissemination of your knowledge and how to promote the utilization of the knowledge that has been produced, which is also quite a serious challenge in our work. And you can find here resources. So I won't say more here, but just to let you know that there are many systematic approaches to include ethics at the level of an organization. Another thing that is also quite interesting is having the team, having your colleagues supporting you in making ethical judgments and fair judgments. Sometimes I feel it's taken a bit for granted that every evaluators have the same set of values, but actually we're all coming from different backgrounds. We're all coming from social backgrounds, from geographical backgrounds, from cultural backgrounds. So we all come with different views on how our values are playing a role in our work and how they should be playing a role. So opening up the discussion and again, the dialogue in your team is key in that regard. Try to talk with your team or your teammates how they want to conduct an evaluation, what they think the role of an evaluation even is. Because sometimes we tend to get lost a little bit in the details, and the devil is in the details. And we forget the bigger picture, why we're here, what we're trying to do. Promote change. Discuss how you want to do that. Or try. I know there's always time and budget limitations, but this can be really beneficial. Collective decision-making, we wanted to do a bit of a focus here on this concept. It has proven quite beneficial to brainstorm, to triangulate, to make sure that you can work in a collegial manner, because evaluation teams are very often scattered all around the globe, and it's very difficult to actually take the time to gather and to discuss on the process of an evaluation, but also on the content, really on the content, and not get lost in the more technical discussions. So don't shy away. We would recommend you to not shy away from this. And if some of you are team leaders of evaluation team in the audience, don't shy away from opening up the debate on this. You can only win from it.
Great, Sarah.
We're moving on to the part on commissioning, planning, and design. Mariana, the floor is yours.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to add that we are actually we are trying to prepare a checklist of things that you can use when trying to open up the debate with your evaluation team on ethics and doing no harm. Okay, so now we are moving into another set of aspects, because we talked to you about 4 elements, right, in the beginning, the foundations, the soft skills, the help me, Sarah, foundations, soft skills, the well-being, and also the being grounded on those big values. And then Sarah walked you through 2 more, which is apply all of those 4 at an organizational and at a project level. But now we are moving to the evaluation cycle. So up until this point, you should have gathered all the things you need to start an evaluation. So now what happens when an evaluation starts? The first thing is here on bucket 7, which is watching out for contractual and logistical issues. Some of them were already mentioned by Sarah, but it's important also to say and to state it that the same way that we come with different backgrounds, a client and a provider do not look at the evaluation through the same lenses. So in the beginning, when you are signing a contract, you may be signing something and thinking about something different than your client. And that will be seen and will be translated afterwards when it's too late to recover. So what should you do to prevent that? The first I want to give you, can we move to the next slide? First, I want to give you 5 tips on how you can, on things that you should think of before signing your contract, before saying yes. And I like to say, you don't need to say no, but you can say not yet and try to negotiate on these aspects. The first one is if you think that the stakeholder, that the client is already has in mind what he wants to accomplish, already knows the findings, and you literally want someone that can prescribe or can certify whatever he's thinking or she is thinking. The second is that when you notice that when you are trying to scope the evaluation, mapping out the topics or the stakeholders or the methods that you will use, when you feel that there is a strong sense of direction on the side of the client, either to add something that you don't feel is necessary or to exclude something from the evaluation, exclude an important topic like gender, or exclude a critical stakeholder that is against their opinions, for example, this is already a red flag. Another thing is when you realize that there is a conflict of interests, that somehow you are evaluating something that maybe you can gain in the future, that you may be involved in the future, or something that you were already involved in the past. A fourth one is when you see that the scope is not well articulated, when you see that everything is a bit blurry, and we do that. I did it when I started, like, let's make it just vague so that I can, like if I have the opportunity to do that kind of data collection, I will, otherwise I won't. And that always went wrong, because at the end there was a miscommunication, and you really want to make sure that you make decisions and that then there are options to change the direction, but you don't want to leave things too vague, or at the same time, you don't want to be so specific that it doesn't give you margin or flexibility. And then the fifth one is that when you realize that, well, after some conversations, I'm actually not the right person for this job, but I really need the money. So what should I do? And here it's very important for you to say to yourself, not yet. Maybe you need another colleague. Maybe you need to secure that you have backup support, even that you will hire, but that you have backup support to deliver a good quality product. And some things that I'm going to give you 2 resources that can help you in this process. So we can move to next slide. One is a very simple thing that many of you I know are already using, is doing an Inception report. So before signing and before really advancing strongly on a direction, you want to get to know the context. You want to have a sense of how the client views the final product, so that you can say, are we there yet or not? And the second one, we can move to the other slide, is having awareness and searching and doing a little bit of searching around what are the ethical guidelines produced for the kind of methodologies that you're going to use. For example, in impact evaluation, it's the correct slide. In impact evaluation, we talk a lot about randomization and randomized controlled trials and other experimental analyses have implications a lot of implications in terms of ethics. So there is a bunch of literature already set up by big and influential organizations describing what you should do, what you should approach. Humanitarians also have a lot of ethical guidelines. So if you are dealing with a specific context or a specific methodology, you may want to look for ethical guidelines or ethical reflections about the use of that methodology. And now we move to another set, which is the data collection. So foundational work, then entering in the evaluation, and Sarah is going to talk to you about things to watch out when you are collecting data.
Thanks, Mariana. I'm going to try to be a bit faster because we want to move to the Q&A part of the session. So just a few words on data collection. It's one of the biggest stage in all our evaluation, one of the trickiest, because this is actually where we put the monster in action with all the different tools and methodologies that we're adopting. You will have, and we will share with you the slides later on, and we really invite you to come back to the slides. We've tried to provide some, let's say, flashcards on actionable steps that you can do when you're, for instance, asking yourself, how could I protect my sources or the data that I'm collecting through interviews? We've also here have flashcard on informed consent. I don't know about you, but for instance, personally, I didn't even know that there were different definitions of what informed consent means. So here you will see that written consent is not always the way to go about it. Maybe some of you are already really well aware of different approaches to have consent, which is something that also sometimes we overlook. But it's a big part of doing no harm and making sure that you're protecting your respondents. So we can talk further about dynamic consent. But also how to create a well-structured interviews. Those are also big challenges, and I mean, we're faced with them quite regularly, so we might as well put in place good practices. I won't say more on this. I'm moving to our last part on closing ethically. So here you have, we will present basically a diversity of tips on how to do after action review. So basically kind of like evaluating your own evaluation and your own evaluation process, but also how to write concisely and in a clear fashion, again, to make sure that what you're producing is actually going to be read by a rich audience. And how to provide feedbacks to the beneficiaries that you have interviewed and that have taken their time to support you in your evaluation. And just one last word on those tips with this flashcard on the importance of adopting reflective evaluation practice. I think if there's really one thing to take away, and I'm pretty sure that if you're already here, it means that you're thinking about it. One thing to enter this entire world on ethics and on consideration on how to do no harm and maximizing good in your evaluation is you need to not only be a good evaluator, but be the best evaluator of yourself. So do self-evaluation, try to do self-assessment exercises to really reflect on your identity, your professional ethics, who you are and how that impacts the work that you're doing. Try to ask yourself questions like, do I have preconceptions on the topic that I'm studying? Do I have preconceptions about the people I'm interviewing? In what ways do my values impact and influence my decision-making and ultimately my judgment? So we can again talk further about all this, but I really wanted to end here because I think this is kind of the starting point as well of this discussion on ethics. And now Mariana will say a few words on the consultation process that we want to implement, and we hope many of you will be interested in supporting us further and about the actual products that we will develop in the next month. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. If we can move to the next slide. Essentially, what we aim to build is a guidebook with these 10 tips for emerging evaluators. It will contain, we can move to the next slide. It will contain lists of checklists, lists of useful links, templates, etc. But it's also going to be available at Better Evaluation website once it's done and it's validated by our peers. Now, I want to talk to you about the process of a peer validation. And we believe that because of the nature of ethical work, it's very important to consult with different regions of the world and different cultures. And we are planning to organize a session where we're going to look in groups, in small groups. We are going to look at all these 10 tips, and we're going to think how they apply to the Asia Pacific context and what differences or what nuances should we include on our guidebook to make sure that the practices, the culture, the different cultures, different Asia Pacific cultures are embedded. And I put here a link, and I'm gonna do it again. A link with a form where you can write your name and your email address if you want to be contacted to be part of this discussion group where we'll try to be context focused. Now over to the organization team so that we can have a pleasant conversation, hearing your comments, your questions, and talking more about this passionate topic.
Mariana, Sarah, thank you very much. There were a few questions, and some of them are wider, some of them are clarifying. And one of the topics, how to join P2P groups. Probably we can provide additional links to P2P in addition to the consultation. I hope it will respond to the question of John Paul. One more question related to resources. There were a link to the guidelines, ethical guidelines of American Evaluation Association. And I know that you viewed a wide range of sources. Maybe you can say a few words about those. And I will note down one more question, which is a bit wider, so that maybe you can structure your thoughts about it. There was a question. Are there circumstances under which ethics may be compromised? I know it's very wide, but maybe you can mention a few issues or maybe practical examples for those who are newer to this topic and would like to know more.
Thanks so much, Alena. Can you please repeat the last question?
The last question was, are there circumstances under which ethics in evaluation can be compromised? And you mentioned many issues, you structured it around evaluation cycle, but here I thought that maybe you can provide a few concrete examples taken from the cycle of evaluation, which make it clearer. Because this question is very wide and we can speak for many hours about it.
Absolutely, Elena. Yes, that is a very important question. And I actually want to bring up a slide. Let me see if I can be fast enough. Because I wanted to bring up a slide on the just give me 30 seconds because it's going to be faster if I just focus. Oh, okay. I'm not going to be able. It will ask me for a login. Yeah, I will just say it. So essentially, say it,
I wanted to suggest maybe Sarah can speak, can say a few words about the resources and the guidelines that you use in the research, and we can give the floor to you with this question then, as you prefer.
Okay, so just on the question on the sources, we have indeed reviewed the American Evaluation Guidelines. Those are kind of cornerstone guidelines on ethics, and the American Evaluation Association has been doing a lot on ethics, discussing a lot over the last 30 years. But again, what we found interesting with those guidelines is that they provide a lot of information on the type of problems and challenges that you have, that you can be faced with. But in terms of practical actions, it's a bit limited. And they're also very much, I mean, I would advise on everyone here to go and read them, but they can be quite heavy to go through. I mean, it's a very systematic work, but we really want here, our goal is really to use the knowledge produced by the amazing thinkers who worked on those guidelines, and to make it more user-friendly, more visually attractive, more easier to travel. But I think one of the, like a web link was shared in the chat, so to those guidelines. So again, I would invite everyone to go check that out. Yeah. Mariana,
Perfect.
which slides do you wanted to share?
No, I have it here. Can I, if the organizers allow me to present, this will stop the other. Okay, I'm gonna stop the current presentation. Okay. And yeah, first I wanna recommend a book that really helped me understand ethics in a simple manner. Is called Evaluation Ethics for Best Practice, and it talks about case studies, so it's not as dense as the others, and you can really get a lot from it. And the other thing, if my screen allows, okay, I think you can see. I just want to briefly talk about that very general question around what are the implications, what can happen to our evaluation. And as you can see here in this slide, we have the whole evaluation cycle that Sarah and I presented, and you can, I'm going to point out to the 5 important elements. The first one is, if we are scoping, we may hurt our evaluation by not scoping the right issues. And I was mentioning, for instance, gender, or when we include topics such as indigenous knowledge or indigenous perspectives or climate, unintended effects on the environment, whatever. This happens many times when we are discussing what are going to be the questions of the evaluation, that we don't include those thematics, and we are hurting the evaluation process by not doing it, or sometimes by not inviting to the table stakeholders that have a lot to say, and to help us design the evaluation. And we just design the evaluation with our colleague or with the direct client, but not enlarging the group of those who think differently than us, to really ensure that the key topics are brought to the evaluation. The second one, Sarah talked about it extensively, and we see a lot of harm being done at the level of data collection. And this can be very simple, like like I'm an evaluation, I don't watch out I start doing field work, and I don't notice that I'm finishing after the sunset, and that the driver needs to go back home, and that he has a long journey and needs to go through dangerous roads, or I'm interviewing women that are like going through domestic violence, and I'm making questions in a way that makes them feel discomfortable. So all these things, they can really impact the way that you are collecting findings. And then at the level of analysis and reporting, we often use a very extractive approach to the way we collect data. We don't even retribute or give anything back to the communities. And it's just like going there and draining their energy and trying to get from a very egoistic perspective all the data that we want. And this is something that at times is seen as unethical. And another example is like, I'm thinking about an evaluation, a recent evaluation where the analysts disclosed information about the interviewees on the report, like as an annex, and they were actually females, and they were operating. The evaluation was being done in a country of extreme violence, and those people who reported and who were interviewed, their names appeared in the report, and then they were being chased and they were running the risk of being chased by those who wanted to do bad things to them. And also when we are doing our outreach and promoting the findings, how the way we write sometimes is very discriminatory and it doesn't really respect, it's not exactly what people told us. And then just as across the whole levels, the people that we hire, a lot of us are working from offices, but we don't actually run the data collection. And a lot of the times the people that we hire are not really, they didn't receive the ethical and no harm preparation to do the work. So they don't have the standards that we think are being applied. These are some examples on how, by not taking into account these elements, the evaluation process itself, not just the evaluator, but the process itself can suffer.
Thank you very much, Mariana, for these examples. I see that there was a link already to P2P groups, so this question was addressed.
Alena, on that question,
collection. There was a quick question, what is FCV? And I clarified in the chat, which is fragile and conflict affected countries. Please kindly ask more questions. Otherwise, I will ask one more question from myself.
Alena, just a comment. I actually just included
I will give some 30 seconds for people to drop question in the chat or even maybe raise a hand.
Alena, can you hear me?
Give a floor to someone who would like to speak.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Mariana.
Okay, good. Because I was saying I included in the form that we shared, I included, I just included—
Mariana, if you are speaking, we cannot hear you.
I think they can, Alena.
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay. So there is an option in the form to receive more information about P2P and about P2P ethics in case you wanna join our efforts as a volunteer.
All right. So if there are no more questions, I would like to pass the floor to Supun for closing remarks because we have 4 minutes before the end of the webinar, and I would like to finish it in time so that we can shift to our daily responsibilities, or for some of you, it's probably a time to have dinner or sleep. Supun, please, the floor is yours. So yeah. Supun, one moment, Supun. So Supun sure. is the co-leader of EvalYouth Sri Lanka. He is also a member Asia Pacific Community Hub, and he's a social media of EvalYouth Asia. So please, now the floor is yours, Supun.
Okay, thank you, Alena, for your introduction. Hope I'm audible. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. So first of all, I would like to thank Randy, co-leader of EvalYouth Sri Lanka chapter, for giving me this opportunity to speak on this great session. It was a very informative webinar. I should say that we learned a lot about how to do an evaluation without doing no harm while promoting the ethics. Also, I would like to thank our speakers, Mariana and Sarah, on behalf of SLEvA for accepting our request despite of their busy schedules. Special thanks to them to leading the peer-to-peer career advisory sessions for young and emerging evaluators, where MIS can get guidance about many career opportunities. I may like to express my sincere thanks to our moderator, Alena, for doing an excellent job, as always moderating and keeping the participant engaged during the webinar. On behalf of EvalYouth Sri Lanka, I extend my thanks to Dr. Chamara for giving opening remarks and Rantika for organizing such a great event. And I must not forget to thank our production team, including Hasiti, Chamatkara, and Madhuka, who contributed their effort to organize this webinar from the very beginning. At last, I would like to thank Mr. Asela Kalugampiria, the president of SLEvA, for his continuous support for every event. And finally, I thank all our participants for taking part of this webinar and asking thoughtful questions. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Supun. And indeed, thank you to all the participants for their interest and desire to know more about ethics, or expand their knowledge, or just contribute the knowledge during the consultation, which I'm sure that Mariana, Sarah, and myself, we would really welcome you to join. Please kindly do so. I would like also to speak, to give briefly few words about upcoming events of SLEvA. The next webinar will be on 26th of August, and the topic will be the current status of African WBIs. Very interesting topic as well. So their operations and impact on national monitoring and evaluation systems. So if you are interested, please watch the link in the chat, which Delmina just have posted. Next slide, please. And also, there will be a consultation on professionalization of evaluation. Many WBIs and organizations within UN system and beyond, they were working on this subject. So here is an invitation, open invitation to discuss this topic once again under the leadership of the partners mentioned, and to come with coherent response. So if you are interested in this subject, please note the consultation and the date in your schedule. And lastly, the next slide. If you are still not aware about Eval for Action campaign, or you are interested, please check their website. If you're a partner, individual or organizational, please join and help disseminate evaluation knowledge and strengthen evaluation practice. So once again, thank you very much. And I wish you a good end of the morning, afternoon or evening. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Alena. I can see that Suleiman still had an answer. I offered to answer on LinkedIn if it's okay for him. Thank you so much to everyone.